back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Boston Motorsports in Brighton, Massachusetts, I'm in my happy place because we're driving a 2021 Porsche 718 Cayman GT4. It's a mouthful, and this is one of my favorite cars. In years past, the GT4 was usually followed by the statement, well, it's not a GT3 or it's not enough, but this is plenty. We've got a 4-liter naturally aspirated flat 6 that puts out 414 horsepower, 309 pound-feet of torque, and it's derived from the Carrera engine, the 3-liter twin turbo. They lose the turbos, they punch it out to 4 liters, and then they give it a nice beefy crankshaft, heads, internals, all of the things to make it an 8,000 RPM screamer. Mated to a 6-speed manual gearbox as God intended in this case, but you can also get it in a PDK if you're just chasing lap times. But almost more importantly than its naturally aspirated powertrain is its suspension, because we almost have an entire GT3 suspension in this thing. Basically, the entire front end of this car is GT3, which is why it feels so good when we get out and drive it. That's probably my favorite thing. The connection between the driver and the front end of this car is unlike anything I have ever felt. Now, I do think this generation, the 982 generation of the Cayman, looks pretty good. This is no longer the consolation prize if you couldn't afford a 911. This is a lot of car. In fact, on the Nürburgring, this is 4 seconds faster than a Carrera GT was. So please, no whining that it's slower than anything. It's incredible to drive, and it has the looks. And we're very thankful that the Porsche GT department allowed us to maintain a naturally aspirated power plant, even though it's not the 9,000 RPM 4-liter out of a GT3. Now, when you're looking at the GT4, it's very enticing to get yourself into a Spider. You got the top down, they weigh about the same, and unlike the previous 981 generation GT4 versus Spider, these are almost identical. They really share pretty much every component. So what would inspire you to buy one over the other? Well, the Spider I've spent a lot of time in, and it's fantastic. You get the top-down experience, but I will say, even though the top is down, there's a bit of claustrophobia involved. We'll talk about that when we get in there, but the visibility out of this Cayman is just mind-boggling. You've got so much glass, it's really easy to navigate and be spatially aware. But something wonderful about the car, because it's mid-engine, you get a trunk and a frunk. So we've got quite a bit of space to play with back here that you can put all your things. Now, obviously you want to be a little cautious back here because you do have an engine and an exhaust right below. It may get a little warm. But I do love the way there's a ducktail and a spoiler. I feel like this just looks so badass on the GT4. But that's not all. We've also got more space up front. And man, let's just take a look at the front end of this car. I think the GT4 really nails it. First of all, these crazy headlights are gorgeous. Those are like the Porsche Dynamic something or others. Probably $3,000 option. You gotta go for it. And then this beautiful lip spoiler as well is right here. This is just all of the 997 GT3 vibes I could ever hope for. But then we jump in here, slide this guy open. That's not a scratch, that's actually a spider web, these evil little spider webs. And we've got a really deep frunk. This is great. And by the way, this doesn't get crazy hot, so it's a great place to store all your luggage or ice cream, depending on what you are intending to do with your vehicle. But if you're doing a lot of track days, you can bury your helmets in here if you've got a co-driver and all of your stuff. You're good to go. This is such a ridiculously practical vehicle. This one's optioned out fairly basic. We've got GT Silver. We have not opted for some outrageous $12,000 or $13,000 PTS paint job, nor have we gone insane and color matched our headlight washer nozzles. Those aren't paint matched. That costs a lot of money. We've got black wheels, no cost option, and we've even got the steel brakes. So this is kind of like the Tedward spec of a GT4, because I'm not going to go out and opt for $40,000 or $50,000 in options on my GT4. I just wanted to drive, and at about $100,000, $98,600 I think is the starting price of a new GT4. You get a lot of car for that money, and then maybe you add the headlights and a few little things just to make them more satisfying. But the ultimate option, and I think you just have to accept the $5,000 or $6,000 that goes along with it, carbon buckets. This is a must-have in your GT4, not only for the appearance, because my goodness, do they look good, but these feel so great in a corner. They are very supportive. I mean, this is just the ultimate must-have option in any Porsche GT car. And I understand that some folks don't want them because they're maybe a little larger. I'm a skinny guy and I fit in these really nicely. But the 14 or 18-way seats that you would get otherwise, while probably more comfortable on a long commute, I think you'll just be happy you bought these. And the seats are adjustable only 2 ways. They are fixed back seats, so you have a switch over here where you can raise and lower the seat. And then you also just have a manual forward and back control. Very nice. Now, the seating position in the GT4 is sublime. We're nice and low in the car, but I don't feel like a little old lady hunched over my seat. I actually have a pretty good view of the road. And then all around me, because I've got great rear quarter glass, monster glass in the rear, and no giant hump like you would have in the Spider, I can actually see out of this car and be spatially aware during my drive. This one has the Alcantara steering wheel with an optional, I believe, $330 stripe down the middle of the 12 o'clock position. So let's take it out for a drive. Jumps to life, letting us know we need an oil change in 9,600 miles. I think we're gonna be just fine today. Down here in our center stack, we've got our sports exhaust. Ooh, big change. Very nice. We've got an auto blip button, which I love that they've separated this out so you can just turn it on and off very quickly, and it is not attached to a sport mode. It just is or is not. We'll keep that off. We've got our sport suspension to stiffen us up. ESC and traction control, we're going to leave those on today. And then we have our auto start stop. Now this is important because it has more functionality than just auto start stop. It actually will enable this car to go into 3-cylinder mode to save fuel at a cylinder deactivation. And it's really funky the way it works, because if you imagine you've got a flat 6, 3 cylinders on each side, it actually just shuts down one bank of the engine. So you're running, instead of a 4-liter flat 6, you're running a 2-liter slant 3. So let's deactivate our parking brake down here, which I always push the wrong direction. You pull it to release it. All right, get her into first, and off we go. Lots of grip from this front end, and plenty of grip from the rears. We're working with a 295 section rear tire. Listen to this through the rev range. That's just wild. And you're staring at the tech because it does have a pretty long gear ratio, especially that second and third vibe. So, you know, I'm staring at the tech like, all right, we're not there yet, we're not there yet. We touched the rev limiter. I've only been in this car for about 10 minutes, so forgive me for not having my shifts timed dead perfectly, but it's fine. It sounds pretty good at the rev limiter anyway. Is designed to corner. That's what she's here for. So back when this was being developed, they were teasing us. They were saying, hey, the GT4, it's going to remain naturally aspirated. They were telling us there was going to be a 4-liter flat 6. Which sort of hinted at the possibility of having a GT3 engine in this car, which would have been just absolutely bonkers. That's what we always wanted, instead of having a Carrera S engine like we did in the 981. Alas, we did not, but we did get this, and I will not be a chooser if I'm a beggar for a naturally aspirated flat 6. This is doing just fine. It doesn't sound as good, obviously. It's got a little more of a bassy tone to it, but it's still fantastic to drive. Now, oddly enough, for such a hardcore car, you can kind of put it over some bumps, and it stays crazy composed. I mean, I was down this same road with a Viper the other day, and obviously an 06 Viper is not a 2021 Porsche, but I'll tell you what, it did not feel as good. kind of thank those long gear ratios. Because you can just pull yourself out of a corner with all the torque. I mean, the last 981 GT3 maybe was a bit down on the power and the torque. It sounded better than this car for sure, but the way this thing can just pull itself out and drag its way out of a corner with a lot of speed. I mean, and that funny thing is, this is not a slow car. I mean, maybe by today's standards, 400 horsepower isn't wild, but what I'll tell you is the amount of grip you have. If you can run this as sort of a momentum car, which I know to the Miata guys sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but that's what it is. I mean, you can just shove it down the straight, late brake, even on these steel rotors. Trust me, you are not going to be missing out that much if you don't want to spring for the PCCBs, the carbon ceramics. You'll be just fine with these. Quick brake check. I mean, seriously, for anybody saying, hey, I better spring for those carbon ceramics, but it's maybe just a touch over budget, you're going to be fine with the steels. Don't even worry about it. So if you're wondering if you can enjoy it on a public road, I mean, of course you can. This is actually a very light feeling, nimble car, around 3,400 pounds. I mean, it's not light, but it's light enough. And that means that you can kind of play around with it in low speed corners. Then you've got all this grip and a bit of aero. You can play with it at real high speeds, and it's fantastic. This thing just does it all. Someone's had a mishap. The real beauty of a Porsche GT4 is that you can bring it to the track and that you don't have to do anything to it to bring it to the track. If you buy yourself a BMW M3, you know, like I have an E92 M3, I can't just bring that to the track and expect the brakes not to fade. I've got to do all this stuff to it first, you know, pads, and then cooling is an issue. Whereas in a GT4, I'm all set. I can just drive this to work and then drive it straight to the track and then do like relentless hot lapping in it and then come home. It's incredible. Just so much grip. There's just so much grip in this thing. I mean, we're not even on real sticky tires. We're on the stock tires that come with the car. If you were to put this thing on some real sticky tires and just go for it, I mean, we get you on an R compound. This is just an absolute weapon. So sure, a Tesla Model 3 is faster in a straight line. There's plenty of faster cars out there. The car costs about $100,000. You could make an argument for Corvettes. You can make an argument for all these other things. But I will tell you one thing. There is almost no other vehicle that connects you to a car like this GT4. It's just that simple. I think this connection is what you're paying for. The powertrain, while it's phenomenal, not overly potent, but it's got a lot of engagement and a lot of feel, and you can manipulate it just how you need it to be done. The GT4 is meant for someone who wants to drive, someone who wants to feel every piece of that drive with a bit of safety. I'm not in a caterum here. I'm not going to get T-boned and die. I have doors, I have safety, I have airbags, all of the things, and I can jump in this vehicle with reasonable fuel economy and get somewhere. And one thing that I can almost 100% guarantee is that you will surprise your friends with the capability of this thing, because they may look at it and say, but it's just a Cayman, but it's not a GT3. I promise you, anyone sitting in that passenger seat is going to get real quiet when you chuck it into its first corner. So thank you so much to Boston Motorsports for the opportunity to drive this 718 Cayman GT4, a car I've wanted to get my hands on for a long time, despite the fact that I've driven the Spider so extensively. And thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing, especially the Patreon supporters. You guys really make this channel and podcast possible. Don't forget to respect the drive. Get your hands on anything that your friends throw you the keys to. Drive. Experience it all. Go through the full spectrum, whether it's a Porsche or a Grand Marquis. Just go drive the things. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one. Now you'll notice that is quite a beefy clutch, and it actually shares its dual mass flywheel with the GT3. So this drivetrain is phenomenal. I love the way it transfers power to those rear wheels. Super easy to rev match. I think that might be due to that shared dual mass flywheel, because this engine, although may not be the ultimate GT Porsche, still really easy to just dip into that throttle and get exactly what you asked for.